Hi, I'm Chris Cooper. Welcome to the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Thanks for joining us. Imported fire ants cause harm and economic loss in a variety of ways, from their painful and sometimes life-threatening stings to destroying crops, livestock, even farm equipment. Today, we're going to give you some strategies for dealing with fire ants. And with the hot days of summer just around the corner, it's time to start thinking about summer tree care. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. So stay with us.
This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Goodwin's Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mr. Jim Voges. Mr. Voges is a certified arborist and a master gardener right here in Shelby County. And Mr. D is here with us today. How you doing today?
Good.
Good.
Glad to be here.
All right. First up, we have a viewer question and some photos from Amy. I am a homeowner in Germantown. I recently noticed a pile of sawdust at the base of one of my mature trees. After further inspection, the tree was full of large black ants. I am concerned they will kill my tree. What action should I take, Mr. D? And we have some photos there on the screen. It's a lot of sawdust looking down there.
Yeah, and I'm probably, when you have carpenter ants in trees, that is a secondary infestation.
Sure.
So, and I'll let Mr. Voges, Jim, address some of the other problems that might be out there. But as far as controlling those carpenter ants, the first thing you need, if you control the carpenter ants, you're controlling a symptom of a problem.
Right.
And you can go ahead and control that using boric acid. Is a dust that you can use, that you could sprinkle into the area. You can also use permethrin. The pyrethroid insecticides will also kill them. The baits, there's a couple of baits. There's a combat ant killing gel and also the Terra Ant Killer 2 are baits that you can use that the workers will take back to the queen and take care of the colony that way. Now, Jim, what do you think of the situation?
I agree with you. The ants are a symptom of the problem. The problem was probably that tree was under stress. Probably drought stress, knowing our situation here.
Probably.
And when a tree is under stress of any kind, it puts out a chemical called ethylene. It's a gas, and it acts as a pheromone to different insects. What happens next is because of that pheromone drawing insects to the tree, probably borers got attracted to the tree. The borers put the holes in there, and now the carpenter ants are going out, cleaning out those holes, and that's going to be their nest. I've heard there's a saying that ants live in a tree, but they generally get their food in the ground.
Right.
Whereas, for example, termites, they live in the ground, but they eat the tree.
All right, well said.
Yeah.
I heard that, well said. All right, Miss Amy, I hope that helps you. Okay, secondary problem. All right. Now, since we're talking about trees, Mr. Voges,
Yes.
Our tree hugger, Mr. D. Here's our tree hugger right here. Let's talk a little bit about tree care. What are some of the things that we need to know? And we
Okay.
can start with fertilizing.
All right, fertilizing is something that's generally overdone. A tree that grows too fast, whether it be a genetic thing or because it's being fertilized too much, is putting most of its resources into growing and holds very little back in reserve to deal with defenses against disease and insects. And so we don't want we don't want fast-growing trees.
Okay.
If you feel like you must fertilize, maybe every second or third year. You don't have to fertilize on a real regular basis. Do your fertilizing out around the drip line of the tree. When you get up close to the tree, all those roots have turned to wood. They cannot absorb the nutrients. So you want to go out around the drip line and use a high nitrogen fertilizer. And I like to use something like this, which is a root feeder. This happens to be one where you can put pellets into the end here, a hose connects to it, and it shoots the fertilizer directly into the soil. There's another type that has a bottle on it, and you can put virtually any kind of fertilizer in there, and that's a good way to fertilize, but get out away from the trunk of the tree, and don't do it very often.
Okay, not very often, because
Right.
I always get the question, so yeah, I just planted my tree, which they just got, you know, from a nursery or wherever, and they want to fertilize it right then and there.
And urban foresters and foresters all suggest do not fertilize at all that first year. You want that tree to get acclimated to its new environment before you start pruning it or anything
Okay.
other than watering.
Other than water,
Gotta keep them
Gotta
watered.
get that.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about one of your favorite topics, mulching. Let's hear it, Mr. Bogus.
Do not build a compost pile
There you go.
up against the tree unless what you're wanting to do is compost the base of that tree.
You want to kill the tree.
Because that's exactly what will happen. Over a period of a few years, you will actually, the bottom of the tree will actually decay and will just fall over. Think of mulching as a donut. You want a hole in the middle, and you want the mulch out around the, and go all the way out to the drip line or beyond, but do not stack it up against the tree. That's the most important thing.
Sure. What kind of mulch do you recommend using?
Almost anything that's organic and that will decompose, because it will be good for the soil, and it'll return nutrients into the soil, and you get some just natural fertilization by doing that. Trees out in the forest don't get fertilized very
There it
often
is.
by foresters. They handle their own thing.
Do pretty good.
They do pretty good.
Our soil's actually pretty good around here for that.
Okay. Some people won't believe that.
I know they don't. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it isn't good.
That's right.
Exactly right.
All right, so there it is about mulch, all right, from Mr. Bogus himself. Now, what about pruning?
This is not a good time of
Okay,
year to
it's
do
not.
heavy-duty pruning on a tree. The fall, late fall, early spring is the best time. However, the 3 Ds, damaged, diseased, or dead limbs, this is a good time. They're easy to see because the tree is leafed out. You can spot those limbs.
Okay.
This is a good time to get rid of the 3 Ds.
What about the
And
one that will damage you when you're riding under it with a riding
Yes.
lawnmower? Can you take him off that?
Yeah, I would. Anything that's looks like a hazard, naturally, you'd take it out. Just remember the 3 Ds. And as far as pruning, I highly recommend if you have a large mature tree that you care about, use a certified arborist, use an ISA certified arborist, because they do understand what they're doing. They understand the correct way to prune. And what we just talked about, removing dead, diseased, and damaged leaves, arborist calls that cleaning. You call an arborist and say, you need your tree cleaned out, and he knows exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. And we have some good ones here in Shelby County.
Yes.
We do. Now, is there a website that they can go to?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
If you will go to www.isa-arbor.com, and you can find all the certified arborists here in Shelby County. Not all of them actually work on trees. For example, I don't climb trees anymore, but you will find a list of certified arborists for Shelby County.
Okay. Good deal. All right. Now, let's talk about watering. Very important now, especially here.
Too much water or not enough water are our two biggest problems around here. We have drought,
Yes.
and when we have drought, you've got to keep those roots damp. You've got to put water in. The best way to know if you're needing to water or not is to use a little simple water meter like this. Costs $5 or $6. You can get it at most any garden center. And go around the drip line area and check your soil for moisture. It's not an accurate meter as far as percentage, but it'll tell you if you have a lot of water, a lot of moisture in the soil, or if the soil is almost dry or somewhere in between. It'll give you a feel for how it is. I like to use my root feeder for watering.
For watering?
Because, I mean, without putting any fertilizer in it, I stick this in the ground where I'm injecting water deep into the ground, and it's good not only for trees, but it's good in shrubs too.
Okay.
In areas where you have a lot of shrubs, you just stick it in the middle of that area and let the water pump into the soil.
Okay. Now, while we have a minute left, now somebody's sitting here and they're going to ask, how much water though for my tree? How do we gauge that? How do we do that?
Again, use this. Do some watering. If you use this on a regular basis, you will first learn your soil.
Okay.
And you will learn how much is taken up by trees. And once you kind of get a feel for that, you'll know in the future how often. Another thing I caution you about is too much water. If you have an automatic sprinkler system,
Yeah.
we're losing a lot of trees because people keep the roots damp all the time, and most trees cannot handle that. So too much or too little, either one is a problem.
Okay. So get to know your soil.
Get to know your soil and the water. A big oak tree will take, a mature oak in July or August will take up about 500 gallons of water.
All right.
So just to give you an idea.
Right.
So it's something you need to pay attention to.
Okay, well, I appreciate that good information there, Mr. Bogus.
And that carpenter ant problems probably started by not enough water.
All right. There you have it from Mr. Bogus himself. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. According to the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, imported fire ants were first reported in Tennessee right here in Shelby County back in 1948. Now they've spread to 58 counties here in the state of Tennessee. Mr. D, we need some background information on fire ants.
Well, there's a lot of information out there about fire ants. You know, they first came to the United States in 1918 in the Port of Mobile. They climbed off of a boat in the Port of Mobile. They were not successful in establishing themselves there then. In the late 30s, they did it again. They entered the United States through the Port of Mobile, climbed off of a boat, and from that point on, they started spreading across the southeast United States. The reason that we found fire ants here in 1948, though, they were not overwintering here in Shelby County in 1948. The nursery industry, a major part of the nursery industry is down in the Mobile area. There are several huge nurseries, and we would get landscape material, shrubs and things like that from down there, and they would be infested with fire ants, and then they would survive for that summer, and then they would die over the winter. We were not officially declared an infested county until the mid to late 90s. I moved here in 1995. We were not officially infested until a couple of years after that. I know I ran into some fire ants at the zoo, but they were on shrubs that had been brought in from Sims, Alabama, you know, right outside of Mobile. The fire ant has evolved. When they first came to the United States, it was the imported red fire ant, Solenopsis invicta. Now we have three different kinds of fire ants here in the United States. We have the imported red fire ant, and that's most of the southeastern United States are infested with the red. We also have the black, which is Solenopsis ricteri, and they are more cold hardy than the red. And so in the northern boundary, most of the fire ants we have here in Tennessee are the black or a hybrid, which is between the black and the red. So that's what we have here. That's what has been successful in evolving and adapting to our environment. You know, we had a cold winter this year, but we did not have a period of time for 4 or 5 days where the ground froze and the freeze line was like 12 inches below the ground. We didn't have that, and we used to have those kind of things happen here in Tennessee. We don't have that now, and these hybrid and the black imported black fire ant are able to gradually continue to move a little bit further and further north. We've learned to live with them. They're a problem in the livestock industry where, you know, especially in the areas that the mama cow is not used to fire ants, and she may have a baby calf and let it lay down close to a fire ant mound, and there have been cases where that's been a problem, and we've lost some calves that way.
Wow. Okay.
In row crop situations, they're considered beneficials for the most part because they eat, you know, some of the pests that eat crops. They eat worms, and you know, they're carnivorous. They're omnivores. They eat both plant and animal material. But we've got them now, and we've learned to live with them. You know, they scare you to death, and if you've ever been stung by one, you know why they call them fire ants. But we definitely have them here. I don't have them up in Lauderdale County yet, up in Halls where I live. But they're gradually. I mean, we probably have them in the county. I don't have them on my
your
place,
property.
but they will probably get there. They're kind of probably the counties closer to the Mississippi River, and then over in Middle Tennessee, it's moving up in that area too. I don't think we've got a lot of them over in the Smoky Mountains yet, but
not yet.
You can control them with using the Texas two-step.
And not the dance, right?
Not the dance. I mean, you can probably, I can control a few of them with the dance, but not a lot of them. But the Texas two-step is simply using a bait for, you know, putting, and there's several baits that are out there. Put that out. Don't sprinkle it on the mound. The entrance holes to the mound are 3 or 4 feet out from a mound.
Right.
So sprinkle your bait out around, you know, in a circle, the donut,
Mike,
the size.
I remember you telling us one time, if you're standing there looking at the ant mound, actually your problem's behind
They're
you.
behind you, yeah, they're coming at you. They're and they're not going to mess with you unless you know, the only time they use that mound as an entrance and exit point is when, number one, when you disturb it. When you disturb it, they come and they're fighting and they're ready, they're going to defend their brood.
Yeah.
And then some of these spring rains that we're getting right now, you might see the adult males emerge and fly out along with the you know, and the queens, and that's when they do their mating flights. And that's the only time they actually use that for an entrance and exit. The purpose of the mound is simply to control the humidity and temperature and moisture for the brood. During wet conditions, the mounds will be tall, and the brood are up there trying to get them away from the groundwater. And then during dry conditions, the droughts we had last summer, you know, you almost didn't see the mound. It's flat because they're down there trying to find proper humidity. But the Texas two-step is starting with a bait, waiting about 7 to 10 days, and then going out there with a contact insecticide and killing the workers. If you just use one of those, if you just use the bait, you'll kill the queen, and the workers may live as long as 9 weeks.
Wow.
And they're still out there, so they're still causing you a problem for 9 weeks. If you just use a contact killer, you kill the workers, but the queens continue to pump out you know, the eggs, and your mound stays there. If you do a perfect job of controlling fire ants, just keep in mind that when that queen has mated with a male and she's flying around looking for a place to land and start a new colony, she tries to find an area where there are no mounds.
Okay.
So if you did a great job of controlling them, then that's where they're coming. That's where they're coming. And it's an ongoing deal. If you disturb them, if you go out there and kick the mound every day, they will move. They do not like to be bothered. So you know, you can do that. Just worry them to death, and they may get out of your way.
All right, there you have it. Well, you can tell he's passionate about those fire ants, huh?
Yes.
All right, here's our Q&A session, Mr. Voges. Feel free to jump right on in there with us, all right? Here's the first question. Now, I was digging around in my garden and saw these white-looking curled up worms. Mr. D, what do you think those are?
Probably grub worms.
Probably
grubs. You think?
I think so.
Most of the grub worms are larvae of scarab beetles, the May beetle, June beetle, things like that. They are root feeders, and if you've got a lot of them, they can create problems. Easy to control with carbaryl, you know, insecticide, but I wouldn't do that unless I had a real heavy infestation. A few of them, no big deal. You know, armadillos and the moles,
The moles,
are gonna feed on them. They got to have something
Well,
to
like
eat.
Carol Reese says, those critters have to eat too.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's exactly
right.
right.
So they're there. Yeah, there's a reason why they're there. Huh?
That's right.
Food chain.
But I have seen them twice in my career, once in a lawn and once in a pasture, where they were, 12, 15 per square foot. When you rolled the
That's a
sod
lot.
up, there were that many, and
That's a lot.
and they needed to be treated. And that probably happens more often in a lawn than it does in a pasture situation. But they're easy to control. You can put the insecticide out there late in the day. Understand they come up at night and they'll crawl
Yes.
around on their back
backs,
on your
yeah.
lawn, and they'll come in contact with the insecticide. And if you've got a lot of them, your lawn will be kind of squishy the next morning when you walk across it because of the number of cutworms that you kill.
All right, grub worms, there you go. Okay, here's the next question. What is the best way to control snails and slugs? They are destroying my hostas.
Beer.
Yeah.
Good old beer, huh?
I prefer to drink the beer.
Okay.
And what metaldehyde and iron phosphate.
Iron
The
phosphate.
baits that contain one of those will do you. And what are the trade names of the one with iron phosphate? I have a
Like Sluggo.
Sluggo, something like
it's
that.
one of 'em.
Yeah. But either one of those will do you a pretty good job. But you got to stay with them because
You definitely gotta do that.
I use pounds and pounds of that material at my house.
Yeah. Iron phosphate is actually safer if you have pets and kids.
Is it
Yes. Much
Good.
safer.
safer than the metaldehyde?
Yes. Especially for pets and kids.
I have
Definitely
neither.
safer. Oh, so
I
you
do
got
have
no problem.
I have grandkids that show up every once in a while, but it's good to know.
Yeah, but those baits are definitely a lot safer. But yeah, you can always use beer, pour it in a little lid. They like the smell of yeast, so they're gonna come to it and they're drawn to it, and they're gonna go down in there and they're gonna drown.
I've caught a lot of them that way.
Yeah, it works.
I don't drink beer, so
Hope you use cheap.
I do
you don't
cheapest stuff
okay.
I can buy.
All right, there you go for controlling your snails and slugs. Here's our third question. What is the best tree to plant in the Memphis area? We have our tree expert here, so Mr. Voges, what do you think
Yeah,
about
that
that
is a
question?
really hard
Isn't that tough,
question to
though?
answer because it depends on the microclimate in which you're going to put a tree. But
You could work from the other direction. What's the worst tree? You could work from the other direction if you
Bradford
need
pear.
to.
You said that quick.
I'll tell you my two favorites and why.
All right, go ahead.
Bald cypress because, number one, it can handle the wet.
Okay.
Like the weather we're having right now. And by the way, we're about 6 inches above normal in my
you go.
backyard
Okay.
on rain. It can handle the wet, and any tree that can handle a lot of water can also handle drought. Now, it doesn't make them drought proof, but it makes them drought resistant.
Okay.
So once you get a bald cypress established, after the first couple of years, it can handle our droughts pretty good. A third reason is because during the Elvis storm, my bald cypress just went like that, and they are now both standing straight up. They bend, they don't break,
okay.
and they will pull themselves back up.
Okay.
Second tree that I would highly recommend is a ginkgo, simply because you can't kill it. You can do everything wrong. Once you get it established, those first 2 years, you have to keep it watered. But once it's established, you just can't kill it.
Except with mulch.
Yeah, so with the mulch, right?
If you stack it up against it, probably that would kill it, yes.
So ginkgo, bald cypress. But the ginkgo, but what if you have a female ginkgo tree
I don't
that has
think-
the smelly fruit?
You can't buy one.
Okay, so you can't buy one.
You could probably buy one at a special nursery that does research, but you're not going to even buy one around here.
Okay.
So don't worry about it.
So we won't worry about the female ginkgo tree. Now the bald cypress, people always ask about the little knees. So will you get those in?
Only if they're standing in water,
Standing in water. There you
more
go.
or less constantly. You're not going to have knees with bald cypress. I mean, not in a normal yard.
Okay.
If it's standing in the middle of your pond or lake, then yes, eventually you will have.
All right, we have time for one more question. After all of this rain, and it's been a lot, I have a dozen of mushrooms in my lawn. Do I need to remove them? What do y'all think?
No.
No. I don't see any use.
No need to unless you want the exercise. But, you know, they're not going to hurt anything.
They're not going to hurt anything, and they're going to go away as soon as it dries out some.
Okay. And if you want to remove them, can you compost them?
Certainly, yes.
Throw them in the compost pile if you want to do it
Put
that
them in
way.
the compost pile.
You have kids running through the yard, maybe small kids or pets. If you have to remove them, throw them in the compost pile.
Right.
I think that'll do it. All right, thank you. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, you can watch past episodes of The Family Plot online. Just go to WKNO.org and click on KNO Tonight, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Chris Cooper, and be sure to join us next time for The Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for The Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.